guys, Renata Sandor here from MeetAdvisors.com, and I'm joined with Craig Jenkins-Sutton, co-founder of Topiarius. How are you today?
Very good.
Thank you so much for coming in, and I'm glad you found the building.
Yeah, it can be a trick in Chicago, but I did.
So I want to start off with asking you, who are you and what is Topiarius?
All right, well, my wife and I started Topiarius almost 12 years ago. We really had grown to understand ourselves a little bit better in roles where we were employees and realized that we probably would be better bosses. And so we were looking for opportunities to do that. I had been working in the landscape industry for quite a few years in different places, and when we moved back to Chicago from a couple of year stint in Massachusetts, I personally started Topiarius in the back of a four-door hatchback Ford Focus station wagon.
Okay.
Well, my wife worked for 2 years actually helping us pay the bills. Once the business was established enough, she quit her job and started working with Topiarius full time. And yes, that means that she was out digging holes and spreading mulch right alongside
Everyone's dream.
Yeah, to work side by side with your spouse in 40-degree rainy weather. It's
perfect.
Yeah, the American dream.
So what is Topiarius? So what do you guys do?
All right, so Topiarius over the years has evolved. We currently are a landscape design, build, and maintenance firm.
Okay.
And we primarily operate within the city limits of Chicago. So there are a lot of great landscape businesses here in Chicago, and we really have kind of found our niche working in the city as opposed to trying to compete against some of these amazing firms that are geared for work in the suburbs.
So who is your kind of ideal client, or who do you target? Do you target homeowners or maybe more of a corporate setting? So what does that kind of look like?
Our primary customers are going to be homeowners of either single-family or multi-unit residences, as well as commercial clients that have higher expectations for how their properties look. So, you really are looking at an investment in your property when you're working with us, and so you're going to need to support that somehow. So
yeah.
Typically higher end.
And so where does the name come from? Because it's not a very common name you would think, to name your business.
Well, there are a lot of landscape companies that are, Craig's Landscape or Jenkins-Sutton Landscaping, and we really looked at this really from the start as our retirement portfolio.
Okay.
And so one of the ways that we tried to manage that right from the beginning was finding a name that had appeal to a higher end customer, but also allowed us, when the time came, which is still quite a few years off, to sell the business that didn't tie us so specifically to the business.
Right.
So I did some searching, and I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to botanical names, and so I did some searching and found Topiarius, which is Latin for of or pertaining to ornamental gardening.
All right. Well, then that kind of worked very well with especially what you do. So kind of moving away from the business and more onto you, I know you touched upon it a little bit earlier, but what drove you to really become an entrepreneur versus working for somebody else?
Well, that really, I think I probably would be a better employee now.
Looking back at it.
But, when I was in my mid-20s and early 30s, I'm a fairly opinionated guy, and it just was, it was fairly obvious that it would be easier for bosses to not have me as an employee and easier for me to not be an employee with a boss. So, that, and then, my family, my history is that my father was an entrepreneur. He had a small business in central Minnesota. And so, it kind of was a natural fit. In fact, I have very few of my past relatives who aren't entrepreneurs. So whether that's farming or electrical contractors or So it's kind of in my blood.
Yeah, it's in your blood. So what are some of the challenges you've seen growing your business? Unless it's all sunshine and rainbows.
It is. It's all. I've never had any problems. I think, as I think most people in the last 5 years would say, is that for us the biggest challenge recently was the economic downturn. Mm-hmm. The housing crash just really affected our at the time our customers. Mm-hmm. So early on in Topiarius, our primary customers were middle-class neighborhoods, outlier neighborhoods in Chicago, where people, professional people had built enough equity in their home that they were able to take out lines of credit and spend the money to fix up their landscaping. Well, when the economic downturn hit and there was no line of credit available anymore, that work primarily disappeared. And so that was probably the most significant challenge for us in the last few years. You know, but there's always just kind of the normal things, like how do you manage growth as a small business when you're going from the guy who knows everything about the business and is intimately involved with not just where every tree and plant goes, but which face is pointing forward, to having people out in the field and not having that connection. You know, how do you manage that growth as a small business owner, and what are the systems that you build and put in place? You know, has been, you know, another real challenge for us.
And how have you overcome some of your challenges, or how are you overcoming some of your challenges?
Well, the economic downturn for us was probably the biggest one, and it really meant, and it coincided, the economic downturn coincided with our realization that we had to grow as a business. And so we really pushed growth through the downturn. Well, in order to do that, we had to really concentrate on where the market was. So, you know, we stopped working in neighborhoods like the North Park neighborhood and moved to Lincoln Park, where people were not dependent on a line of credit to do work. The challenge is that you're going from a place where people have a backyard to a place where the only outdoor space is on a roof deck, either on their garage or on their home. Well, it's a different, I mean, that's just a whole different world. And so we really have concentrated in the last few years on really developing a fuller spectrum of services. And so we not only have in-ground crews that are putting plants in the ground and doing paving, but also we now run 2 full-time carpentry crews, as the spaces that we're working in just tend to be more of a built environment.
Right.
And then additionally, we have, within the last couple of years, really changed and are focusing on developing our maintenance portfolio, primarily because it's a repeatable business. It's something that we can sell year to year to the same customer, as opposed to having to try and find new customers.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
And then, you know, as far as managing the growth part of it, it really has been about developing systems, and this is, I give a lot of credit to my wife on this, is she's has really kind of taken the lead on that in really building systems that help manage accounts receivable and accounts payable, as well as human resources, and then just building the layers that you need in the organization to manage that growth. So hiring an operations manager who is now taking me out of the field and is allowing the business to function and the crews to go out and operate, you know, without me having to be on site every day. And then just the most recent thing that we've done has been to hire a full-time designer. And again, I'm a fine designer, but I'm not a trained designer, so I'm slow. And so being able to hire somebody who's trained in that has really has allowed us to be able to manage our sales much better by getting proposals out much more quickly.
Right. Great. And so kind of wrapping up our segment, I want to ask you, what is that one piece of advice that you would give to our community of entrepreneurs?
Well, let me tell you. The first thing is have a good product and provide good service. Now, everybody's going to tell you that. So what we have found is how we have done that is by controlling our brand. And that, as I mentioned earlier, really started right from the beginning with choosing our name. And also spending the money to get quality logo and print material. If you're going after a higher end customer, they're going to expect that.
Right, exactly.
And then that brand extends throughout the business. So making sure that your trucks are logoed in a way that is appealing, making sure that they're clean, making sure that your employees are dressed well and in uniform, and then even managing contracts and making sure that contracts are clear and concise, making sure that email communications use proper grammar. I mean, those are things that
it's like the little things, but
and that's I can't tell you how many vendors that I have just stopped using because they didn't present themselves to me well, even just in email communication. And so, I mean, just creating that brand is really important. And then, if you are building a business that, like my wife and I are trying to do, that eventually will become our retirement plan, I would strongly recommend that you figure out a way to not tie the business so that it's so closely dependent on you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That
So
makes sense.
you know, and that's one of the things. Again, choosing Topiarius. If we get to the point where I'm trying to sell Craig's Landscaping, my customer base is going to really have a problem losing Craig.
Right.
Where if I'm building a brand that is not solely about me, it's a more saleable company.
Right.
So,
that makes complete sense.
I mean, those are two of the things that I would say as you're building the business. Those are things to be thinking about.
And where can people find out more about you? What's your website?
Our website is topiarius.com. I can spell it for you if you want.
And it's actually going to be also at the bottom of this video, so you guys can go check it out.
Or you can find us on Facebook at Topiarius. I think it's Topiarius Urban Garden and Floral Design. Or another way is to check us out on Pinterest. My wife has spent a lot of time in the Pinterest pages.
Pinterest is great, especially for things like this.
Extremely visual. So yeah.
Well, guys, check out topiarius.com and check out meatadvisors.com for more videos and blogs. Thank you.